Hi, welcome to Gotta Ping, a careers podcast you should listen to if you want to grow your career online and offline. Hi, my name is Mei Ping, and I'm a professional career coach and international speaker with more than a decade of experience at some of the biggest companies in the world. To learn more about what I do, visit meiping.com. That's meiping.com. All right, let's jump right into today's episode. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to a brand new episode of the Grow Your Career Online and Offline podcast. This is Mei Ping. Today, I want to talk about the speak up policies in multinational companies. So, if you have been working in a corporate job in a slightly bigger company that's beyond an SME, you have likely heard of the speak up policies that are pretty much mandatory HR policies and are frequently talked about in multiple platforms, and how all these things are really a good thing, yada. So in today's episode, I just want to share my personal experiences and also some of my clients' experiences having um, applied the speak up policies, but may not necessarily see the sort of like result or impact that is actually intended. So this topic came up quite recently when I was talking to one of my clients who was really facing a lot of problems with certain people at work. So we were talking about what she can do and some of the options available to her, to deal with this potentially problematic person, not just in attitude, but perhaps some of the behavior. My client didn't feel that this person was really adhering to in terms of like the company's policies and some of those things. So what I'll say today may be a little bit controversial, but my personal experience with speaking up policies, I feel like these are these are really for show. And I'm really sorry to say this, but before you utilize a speak up policy, right? And if you work in like bigger companies, I'm sure you have seen general speak up policies that pretty much go like this. Number one, talk to your boss, right? The first person that you should talk to. Then you could talk to HR, right, for a little bit more of an independent view. And thirdly, you could fill up in an anonymous form, so to speak. And yeah, and then it goes to an anonymous team, and then everything will be investigated. You need to give the details, you need to give the contact list, and so forth. So now, I have personally used the speak up policy before. However, my personal experience has not been particularly positive, and I'll tell you why. While the intention of the speak up policy is a very positive one, right? Giving employees and staff a space to share, potentially anonymously, and raise concerns. But I feel like you need to remember at the end of the day, the speak up policy or whatever, like there are people behind who are managing these policies. So when there are people involved, what that also means is that there will be a lot of like biases as well, and that's where everything becomes really tricky. So the example that I was talking a little bit about earlier, it was something that I had raised to my boss at that point in time, but it was pretty much brushed off and said, okay, yeah, this person he's just like this, right? So just, it's fine, just ignore. I feel like if somebody tells you to ignore something, that is not a good sign, because you are basically subjecting your mental health to just deal with this person that clearly is misbehaving, and you're pretty much being told by your boss that, oh, you should just like suck it up and shut up. And I think that this is actually really against the speak up policy. The fact that I feel like if you raise it to your boss, then that's clearly something that has been bothering you. That's why you're raising it, right? And I feel like for the boss to say, hey, maybe just ignore, is fine. This person, he's like this, so just ignore. I feel like that is completely unacceptable. And furthermore, that person is in a very senior position as well. So I feel like it says a lot about the team's culture. It says a lot about the company's culture, and that is not a positive thing. Then when I also talk to other people, they will tell me that, oh, maybe you should just have gone to HR. HR will sort it out. um, I don't mean to be rude here, but sometimes I feel like dealing with HR is one of those functions that it really depends on the quality of people that you speak to. Because I have spoken to like really good HR people, but I also know of like, really, yeah, HR people who are, they themselves have very bad attitude and they themselves don't care about people, but they're in human resources, which I find it extremely confusing. Um, but the point I'm trying to make here is that if you choose to go to a HR person, um, make sure that you have a good idea of like the dynamics behind HR and the business. And I can tell you that in most instances, the HR person will always side with your team. They will always side with your boss or the senior leadership. That is just the way that hierarchy is structured at in the corporate world. And it's nobody's fault, but it's just structurally works like that. And I have had clients who come to me very naively, like air all their grievances to HR, and later on, these things that were supposed to be confidential, right, were informed to their boss and informed to their team, and then they really, get the backlash out of it, right? So that actually creates a lot of lack of trust on both sides, like both, on my client side as well as the boss's side. And this is just like a fundamental flaw in the corporate world, generally speaking. So I just want to remind you all that if you choose to go to HR, just remember that HR is also a person, right? And people have biases, unfortunately, but that's the reality. People have biases. And in most instances, I'd say like 99% of the time, the HR person will always side with your team, will always side with your boss. So sometimes I feel like it's very counterproductive to go to HR because you do not necessarily get the kind of help that you need, right? In terms of like alleviating that problem. Then the third option I also hear a lot, they say, hey, maybe you should fill up an anonymous form, all these policies are really good, yada yada yada. So I have actually also done that for one of the example that I told you a little bit earlier, like my personal experience. And actually there were no action taken. So in that sense, right, I feel like these all these policies are, I don't want to say it's a waste of time, but I feel like it's most of the time it is being sold as something like, oh yeah, look at, we have all these things and everything else, but like the implementation is like almost zero. So if that is the case, then actually what is the main point of like all these policies? Because I remember from my personal experience, you had to fill up the form, you have to give all the contact details that they could reach out to. You also need to like actually explain in detail what actually happened, and even attach documents and all those things I have done. But at the end of the day, like nothing happened. And if you are curious about the person that I was talking about, the person is still within the company. In fact, in a very senior position as well. And basically, no action was taken, even though like a lot of people knew this person as a really rude person, has done very questionable things. But unfortunately, people prefer to gossip rather than actually taking action to, yeah, remove this sort of thing. And then people wonder why, you know in the corporate world you can't find people with like good ethics and culture. And the reason is because like structurally it's not even enabling that. And it kind of also makes me feel like certain kind of people are actually protected from repercussions, maybe because they are very senior, or maybe they have a special skill set, or maybe this and maybe that, right? And that is really really unfortunate. So in most instances, right, and personally for me, what I did um, quite a while ago, and I always make sure that I have a mentor that is outside of my company, right? So I always make sure that my mentor is not somebody who is working in the company, not in the same team as me, not in the same, you know, region or like responsibility and so forth. So it's really somebody that is outside. And my mentor for a very long time was somebody that I had worked with in an earlier company, who could be objective in listening to my challenges and really able to give me perspectives on that. And this mentor I had was from actually a while ago. And it was actually many years ago that even this whole, coaching is not really something very popular. And at that time, it was really like mentors, particularly from, people who are a lot more senior. You really can somebody that you can actually learn from. So I personally found that conversations with my mentor actually gave me a bit more clarity on what I should do, and more importantly, is that the kind of culture, for that company or that team or that management that I actually want to work with. So I think those conversations that I had with my mentor, personally, I found more helpful rather than, trying to tell my boss who would just tell me to ignore everything, or talk to HR where I may face repercussions, or basically fill up like a form where nothing is going to be done. I feel like after doing all those three things, it made me even angrier because I feel like, hey, nothing is happening to this person. Like, what is the point of me like trying to raise everything and like create awareness, or like letting certain people know, when at the end of the day, like, no action is going to be taken. So I felt like all these things actually deterred me from wanting to pursue certain things, or to, I guess, make a change, for lack of better word. But I guess personally, for my own mental health, I always make sure that I speak to my mentor, so at least I get that sort of help. And in fact, when I shared this on LinkedIn yesterday, there was one of my LinkedIn connections actually sent me a message and told me she personally got into trouble because her speaking up was, she actually spoke up about her boss and even to the HR, and at the end of the day, both of them actually ganged up against her. And the worst thing is that that boss that she was like speaking up towards was the assigned workplace coach. Then she basically got into like a double dip trouble because she was like basically raising it. And like I said, HR normally sides with your boss and you're basically on the losing end. So she was in a bit of a situation because of like actually following the policy. So if it makes me very sad that people who are following the policies are the people who are getting into trouble, and it really shouldn't be the case. So anyway, like I said, to change the entire corporate culture is not something that you can do alone. It's probably not something that you can do right now. But what you can do right now is to protect yourself and knowing how you can move forward without letting all these things like really burdening you down. Because if you're constantly pursuing options that it's not going to get result, or even worse, is going to get you into trouble, then that's probably something that's not worth doing. So my advice over here is, sure, right? Assess objectively, and if you feel comfortable, go through all the processes that your company has outlined in terms of like the speaking up policies. But just remember, there is a fourth option, and go and speak to a mentor, go and speak to a coach. You can probably get that solution faster, or at least at a minimum, you get that peace of mind faster. And I think that's what I personally found very helpful for me. And I hope that all of you, or if you are feeling that sort of frustration that I felt previously, you do not wallow in your frustration, and you really take action. Even if you cannot change the entire culture, what you can do is that you can improve your peace of mind. And with that, I'll end today's episode. And I wish you all take care of yourself and do something that can actually improve your situation without trying to overhaul the entire system, because probably that's not what you can do at the moment. So with that, I wish you a very good week, and I'll see you next week. Cheers. Thank you for listening to this episode. For more awesome content like this, remember to like and subscribe. Also, head on over to my website, meiping.com, that's meiping.com, and subscribe to my weekly newsletter for more career growth and personal development tips. You can find the links in the description box below. Once again, you're listening to Gotta Ping, and I'll see you in the next episode. Bye!